Today, we answer a question. Can you run a business with only open source software? Let's get into it. Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Adrian Reddix, and today we want to talk about if you can run your business with only open source software. I got this idea because I've been doing a lot of videos about open source software and how I use it and how other people can use it. And I was wondering if you could run a business just open source software. So the first thing, you're gonna need something to help run your business as far as a computer. You can't do Microsoft or Mac because they're not open source. So that leaves you with one other choice. Well, not one other choice, but one other major choice. And it's gonna be Linux. Linux is an operating system that is open source, and in most of its iterations is free. So you would need an operating system to do things like send emails or get in contact with vendors or have different programs to help you with your business, be it a brick and mortar business or a online business. You need a platform to connect you with everything, and that's what Linux does. Linux is like I discussed in previous videos, Linux is a operating system that it's a full-fledged, robust system that most of the world, as far as servers and things like that, are run on. So Linux can be a very important part of your business operations. The second program, I was thinking, you got Linux now, right? So you need something to help create documents and presentations if you need to, and maybe diagrams or whatever. So you need an Office suite to run a business. You can't do Microsoft Office because, again, it's not open source. So that leaves us with a couple choices. And my favorite, and we talked about it in numerous videos, it's gonna be LibreOffice. LibreOffice is a fully fledged Office suite that has many different functions to it. You have a word processor, you have a spreadsheet, you have a presentation program, a math program, and a draw program, right? So how does this help you in business? Well, you got your word processor. That helps you create letters and flyers and brochures. So you have that aspect. A marketing aspect. Then you have the spreadsheet aspect where you can keep track of business expenses. You can create quotes on the spreadsheet program. You could do a lot of like core financial and accounting functions on your spreadsheet. And as far as presentations, let's say if you had to go and present your product or your service to a potential customer, well, now you have a presentation aspect of it where you can do that. So as far as making your business more well-rounded, LibreOffice can do that for you. Next one, let's say, so you got your Linux, you got your operating system. You also have your Office suite. Now, any business that doesn't have a website is a business that, quite frankly, doesn't exist. But you don't want to pay for hosting. So how do you do that? Well, you run a server or a program called Apache. Apache is a web server, and it takes the hosting from the big guys like Bluehost and any other hosting service and puts it in your realm. So you can host your own website. Only thing you need is a computer that connects to the internet, and you can set it all up right there. What makes Apache so important is when the internet was just getting started, to me, in my own personal opinion, because of its free nature or its open source nature, it helped accelerate the use of the internet. So it takes the power from the big guys and puts it in the hands of the small guys so that you can access the same internet and have the same opportunity. So you can just host your own stuff. I mean, that's pretty much Apache. The next one. So you got your website, you got your Office suite, and now you have your operating system. So what do you need? So if you have a brick and mortar store, you need a POS system, and a lot of them are very expensive out there, and that charges fees per transaction, per user, per month. And it can get expensive. So you can use something like open source POS. And what open source POS does, it takes that real expensive POS system and gives you a web-hosted, web-based POS system that you can host yourself. It's a very clean, very easy to use POS system. If you go run the demo, you can see that it keeps track of inventory somewhat. And it's a very robust, and it's a very useful all-around system. Of course, it's open source, and they're always constantly developing new ideas for it and better processes and better workflows. So they have other open source POS systems or free POS system, which they're free to a certain point. It'll be like you only can do a certain number of transactions, or it'll be something like it's free. They're very limited on what you can do, and then you can charge more. But this is about open source. So open source POS, yes. So you got all your other things. You're gonna need a way to communicate with people. So just like we discussed in a previous video, all these callbacks, I love them. Open source software called Freepbx. Now, Freepbx is it's kind of like Apache. It's a phone hosting system. What Freepbx is a private branch exchange. And what that does is, let's say you have multiple phones. When a phone call comes in, it routes and puts people in different waiting things, or it processes phone calls. It's basically what it is. It's like having a operator or an assistant whose main job is to get phone calls from the main line to where they need to go. You do this because phones can be very expensive, and contrary to popular belief, office phones are still a very valid thing. Not everybody has, or cell phones aren't a practical use for everybody. So as your team grows, the more phones you get, the more salespeople, just the more people you have, you need something there that can handle the workload, because it's going to be a tough thing. Let's say if you have 50 employees, to have 50 separate phone lines. First of all, that's very expensive. Second of all, it's going to be a major headache to maintain. So Freepbx is something you can use to shore everything up. So I think we answered the question, can you run a business on open source software? Yes. But is it practical? The answer is no. Because there's two reasons why running a business solely on open source isn't the best idea. Now, you could take different elements, but we'll discuss that in a minute. The first reason why is business people do one thing or a number of things well. So when you start adding open source or try to make everything open source, you're taking your talents and putting them into things that you're not good at. Let's say if I sell sandwiches and I'm really good at making and selling sandwiches, but now I got to go and update my Apache server. I got to make sure my open source POS is working. I have to make sure that the calls coming in from Freepbx are getting routed right, or people are answering, or my IVR is set and is working. But I sell sandwiches. Well, why am I administering that, right? Or even if I don't administer it, I got to go pay somebody, a full-time employee with benefits and things like that, to make sure all that's working. It takes valuable resources away from things that business owners are good at. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually not the tech side. The second, if you're considering using, or if you think open source is a good thing to use, more than likely, one of your main concerns or your main motivations to use open source is cost, because it's free. Here's one thing, if you're a business owner, you know, or if you're a potential business owner, you're going to learn. There's no way to run a business without spending some money. Even if you did all this, there's one thing that you need that nobody's ever going to give you free, and that's credit card processing. So if you look at the POS system, it doesn't have a credit card processing component to it. But even if it did, somebody has to pay for it. Somebody has to pay for it. You have these businesses out there that offer free credit card processing. Remember what people always say, there's nothing ever free. If it's free to you, then either you're the product or somebody else is paying for it. But it's just because the business isn't paying these processing fees doesn't mean somebody isn't. So if you're not paying for the processing fees, and if the credit card company who's processing the fees aren't paying for the fees, guess who's paying for the fees? The customer. The customer is the one that pays for all these fees. So as a customer, I don't like to be charged a fee that is not upfront. And I guess you can, if you have everything dialed down, you can use these free processing. I wouldn't, because I just wouldn't. So is it practical? So if I were a business owner and I sold sandwiches, which one of these things, these 5 items, I would actually integrate into my system? Here's some problems with each one of them. The only one I would do was LibreOffice, because Office suites are expensive, or the main one anyway. So Linux is a very robust and a very good system. But the problem with Linux is some programs you might use may not be functional on Linux. So that forces you into more than likely Windows or even Mac OS. Freepbx, to me, it's a thing about administration. So if I'm a sandwich shop owner, I want to spend more time on my finances and my sandwiches than administrating a phone. So pay somebody to do that for you. Don't do that. The open source POS, it has a long way to go. It's still a pretty nice system, but I would definitely spend whatever money on something that's reliable, that has support, and that has credit card processing right inside, or the ability to integrate credit card processing into it. And web hosting, I mean, if you're not into it, and if you're not gonna sit there and update and tweak and tinker, and I'm a sandwich shop owner, I'm not gonna do that. So do Wix or Bluehost or any of those number of different hosting or website creation sites out there, and just do it that way. Can you run a business with solely open source software? Yes. Should you? I don't think so. And that's it. Hope you guys like this video. It was mostly me talking and spouting some ideas off the top of my head. If you like that kind of video, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like that kind of video, give me a thumbs down. Tell me why you don't like that kind of video. And I'll check you guys in the next one, or I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one.